Break in remembering a new requirement for cars. Kurt Cobain and Sabres playoff tickets for less than $20. Yeah, it all made news this very weekend, decades past. Dave McKinley recalls when those stories and more were all news to you.
10 years ago this week.
I think everyone is going to be really surprised and pleased how well this has turned out.
But that hardly turned out to be the case with the rollout of Obamacare, marked by a crashing website which
knocked healthcare.gov offline, embarrassing the White House.
Beyond actually resulting in higher premiums and reduced coverage for many, there were additional problems in New York, where more than 750,000 state residents enrolled, only to find the first thing this state did was to mistakenly share their private information with other enrollees.
So, no, it's not anything to be proud of or to crow about.
A week after Ralph Wilson died, the new stadium working group held its first meeting. There would be no public input, and the first order of business was to boot the media out of the room. They never met again. And the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration said it would require within 4 years for all new vehicles to be equipped with rear-view cameras this week in 2014. 20 years ago this week, well, here's something you would never see these days. NBC inviting Donald Trump to host Saturday Night Live.
With musical guest Toots and the Maytals. It's going to be a classy, world-class comedy. Nice hair.
Meanwhile, on Elmwood Avenue in Buffalo,
the ashtrays are back on the bar at Jimmy Mac's because of the state Supreme Court decision which says Erie County's waiver denial under the state's smoking ban was basically unfair. Bar customers tonight celebrated the court decision by lighting up at will.
You could still take in a performance at the Continental on Franklin Street or attend Boom Days at the Pier, where cannons were fired to hail the arrival of spring at the Outer Harbor's Pier Restaurant, which is no longer there either. We were getting the first reports that Prince William had a new girlfriend, name of Kate Middleton. And in the days before our phones took pictures, no school production was complete without Dad and his ever-present camcorder this week in 2004. 30 years ago this week, one of the most notorious gang leaders in Buffalo's history, Sly Green of the L.A. Boys, was convicted of a host of charges under the federal RICO statute. He would later be sentenced to 4 life terms plus 119 years. Back then, we did celebrate Dingus Day, just not with a parade. The first of those wouldn't come about for another 13 years. The Holiday 6 theaters in Cheektowaga were closing down, and we lost groundbreaking Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain, who took his own life at age 27 this week in 1994. 40 years ago this week, there was a big sale going on in downtown Buffalo. Now take a careful look at the items shoppers were browsing and see if you can guess the answer to this week's News to You pop quiz, which is, what do you think they were selling here? And which attracted so much interest among the buying public this week in 1984. Remember, this was back before anyone apparently thought to sell advertising signage on the boards around the rinks at NHL games, when the Sabres made the playoffs and when you could buy playoff tickets for how much?
$9 to $19 a ticket.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar became the NBA's all-time scoring leader and would remain so for 38 years before LeBron James claimed the title. The price of the Sunday Buffalo News was rising to 75 cents. It's $3.75 today. And there were a couple of groundbreakings of note. This one downtown was for the new Erie County Holding Center, while another held not far away on the waterfront was for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And here's how it appears today, some 40 years after construction began on it this week in 1984, when it was all news to you.
All right, thanks, Dave. And do you have the answer to this week's pop quiz? What do you think this sale was?
Like large projection television?
It was all the items that were in the guest rooms, 500 guest rooms at the Statler Hilton Hotel. Okay. They shut it down and ceased operations, so then they had to sell off all those lamps, the desks, the chairs, and everything else. Made public for purchase this week in 1984.
Do you remember this?
I do remember that.
So you could buy like the lamps and the TVs. And
I love lamp.
I love lamp.
Yeah,